Most of the time, my process for figuring out what SCP content I want to react to has a lot to do with the title and thumbnails, which is, I guess that's why the YouTube algorithm is the way it is. But this is a title that's been striking me for a while that I've been wanting to watch, and it's called Intrusive Arachnid Thoughts. It's SCP-632 and it's by Dr. Bob. We're gonna react to it today, guys. It sounds like it's gonna be creepy. Make sure to subscribe to Dr. Bob, subscribe to me, and give me a like on the video, and let's get into this one.
The car screeches to a halt, the door swings open, and the doctor tumbles out. He lands on his hands and knees in the dirt and throws up the few remaining drops of stomach acid left in his system.
He's sick.
He's put his hand in something sticky. He can feel an insect wriggling under his palm. Behind him, the door slams, and a pair of boots walk around to his side of the car.
What's going on?
The translator accompanying him does not offer a hand to help him up.
Uh-oh.
It had been a long car journey with many similar stops. Fortunately,
What's wrong
this
with
was
you?
the last. The doctor gingerly gets to his feet and takes in his surroundings. He finds himself in a small village hidden amongst thick trees. He's not sure what time it is anymore. The flights, time zones, and car journeys wrought havoc on his circadian rhythms. He knows he is in China, somewhere very remote and very rural. He tried to look it up with the maps on his phone during the journey, but he'd lost signal a long time ago. One thing is clear, however. It is the middle of the night. The car's headlights are the only light source in the village. No one comes out to greet them. The doctor brushes himself off and turns to his translator. The man nods towards a small hut near the back of the village,
Oh, the
just beyond
translator,
the
I
headlights'
guess,
reach.
is
His translator
guiding
is a
him
man
somewhere?
of few words, both ironic and deeply unhelpful. The doctor does not know a word of Mandarin himself. In silence,
What are
the
you
two
doing
men
here,
approach
then?
the hut. The doctor reaches out to knock, but his translator has already pushed the door open.
Oh.
Inside,
Oh.
there's just the dim light of a lamp. Almost everything is covered in shadow. It is
Spider
almost
webs?
dark enough that they can't see the cobwebs. Almost.
Uh.
Silken strings drape themselves over every surface, wall, and item in the little hut. It's impossible in places to even see what item of furniture is hiding beneath all of the webs.
Wow, that's a lot of
The
webs,
translator
dude.
reaches out to touch one of the webs in fascination, but the doctor grabs his hand, shaking his head. He hands the translator a face mask and a
So
pair
the
of
doctor
disposable
knows
gloves.
what's up.
Annoyed, the translator takes them.
He just
but
don't
does
know
not
where he's
put them
at,
straight
that's
on,
all.
choosing
Okay.
instead to walk deeper into the hut.
Still
After a
confused.
second, the doctor follows, only he can't help the feeling that something's not right. Something's missing.
You getting a creepy
Here,
crawlies? Yeah,
says
yeah.
the translator. It is the first word he's said in hours. He's standing behind a little curtain looking down at something, as the doctor joins him there and almost retches from the stench. Lying in the bed is an emaciated man. He looks like he hasn't eaten in days. His wrists and ankles are bound tightly to the bed. So tightly, in fact, that his circulation has been cut off. The doctor can see right away the telltale signs of gangrene spreading across
This is
his
kind of
palms.
like what a
But
spider
they're too
does
late.
to its prey.
The man isn't moving. His bony chest isn't rising or
webs?
falling. Worst of all, he must have been dead for a while now. There
Yeah.
are sheets of spider webs draped over his sallow
doesn't look
skin,
too alive.
like some kind of deathly funeral shroud. The translator mutters something in Mandarin. It doesn't take a PhD to pick up on the evident frustration in his voice. A whole night of driving out to the middle of nowhere for nothing. The translator kicks over
so
a
they were
wooden
going to
stool.
save
The
his
sound
life?
is muffled by the thick layer of cobwebs as he storms out of the hut. But something is wrong here. The doctor can't walk out just yet. Toxicology. That's his field. Poisons, toxins, infections,
Right.
bites. But that's the thing. There are no bites
There's no
anywhere on this
bites.
man's body. Head to toe, under the layer of spider silk, there are no welts, bruises, or
How would
puncture
you even
marks.
see him, though?
The
That
only
spider
darkened
silk.
veins standing out are on his fingertips as they rot away from stagnant blood. Nothing to do with poisons. But there's something else, too. A hut holding a dead body, full of spiders' webs.
Right.
But yet, no spiders. A scream fills the hut. The bed rocks violently.
It's the
doctor
guy.
looks down in horror to see the dead man is
Thought
not
he
as
was
dead
dead.
as he'd appeared. He thrashes this way and that, straining against the ties on his limbs. The doctor calls out for the translator, who appears at his side almost immediately. The translator shouts something in Mandarin, trying to be heard over the dying man's screams, but it's no use. The man throws his head this way and that,
I don't
trying to
know if
bash
he's
his chin
dying.
into his own chest or hit the top of his skull against the nearest wall.
He looks like he's in a lot
There's
of
no
pain.
use. The man opens cloudy eyes that stare wildly around the room, searching for something, anything that could help him break free from his restraints. Without thinking, the doctor grabs the man's head and holds it steady. He peers into the man's weeping eyes. Bizarre. If he didn't know better, he'd say they almost looked as if they had spiders' webs built up beneath the eyelids,
Oh
clouding
my
out
God.
the man's windows to see the world. Small, silvery balls of thick liquid gather in the corners of them.
Is
too
he
dense,
turning
too
into a
murky
spider?
to be tears. From somewhere beneath the haze, the man's pupils find the doctor's. In an instant, his body falls still. It is almost as if he relaxed completely.
Huh.
A guttural murmur comes from the man's throat. The doctor looks to the translator for help.
Yeah.
Free me. The doctor looks down at his patient. This is the part of medicine he had always hated the most.
Right.
At what point do you let someone go? At what point do you say it's too late? Is it even right for him to make that decision?
Oh, free me, like free me of this.
A wave of sadness washes over him.
Kill me.
His initial assessment had been right.
Oh my
gosh,
gosh,
it is too late.
man.
Even if he could treat the gangrene in the man's limbs with amputation, there's still starvation and dehydration to deal with.
Yeah, I mean,
and
don't get me wrong.
Venom from the spiders.
He's in a bad place.
There are no signs of venom.
But
perhaps it isn't too late after all. With the right treatment, there may be a chance to. The man's wrist snaps,
ever optimistic.
becoming a loose glove of broken bone that's easily pulled from the restraint. A foul stench of exposed, rotten flesh hits the doctor like a slap in the face. He reels back in horror as the man pulls his other decimated hand free too. Unbound by his bed, the man lets out an animalistic roar. Sitting up in the bed, he tips his head back and starts pounding at it with what is left of his hands. Jagged wrist bones, barely housed by paper-thin skin, slam repeatedly into his forehead. Harder and harder with each hit. The doctor is frozen
just trying to kill himself,
staring as the man smashes his own head. Skin splits, revealing white bone. Bone cracks. Then, with one last effort that seems to take every remaining morsel of the man's energy, he turns and crunches his fractured skull against the wall, caving the front half of his head in like a deflated basketball.
I mean, he has
Silence, more terrifying than any sound, fills the hut.
God.
The doctor stares at the body. An almost comical image pops into his head. The head looks like just a red plastic bag that someone had left on the floor, full of shards of broken pottery. He almost smiles. But then, the spiders appear. Just one at first, then 10, then a stream, then an eruption, spewing out of the gaps in the man's head like water shooting out of a collapsing dam.
No wonder he was in pain.
The tiny pink spiders flood the room, shooting up the walls into every crack and crevice, writhing and rippling around their feet. That breaks the doctor's paralysis.
You better get out.
He and the translator sprint for the door. They crash through it and cover the length of the village in seconds.
You better get out.
Grabbing the door handles, they haul themselves up into the 4x4. The translator slams it into reverse and almost crashes into a tree as he turns them around and back onto the dirt trail. They drive all through the night, not talking. The doctor gets control of his breathing, but his heart does not stop hammering the whole time. He cannot shake the images that fill his head. Spiders,
is it because
pink spiders,
it's actually thoughts that are doing this to him?
The sun is just rising when the driver suddenly pulls over sharply. His eyes are wide, his face deathly pale.
I guess
he doesn't say a word as he sits forward, reaches down the back of his shirt, and pulls out one tiny pink spider.
Oh no!
The doctor yells in shock and hurriedly grabs a sample pot for the man to throw the spider into.
You trying to sample it?
Sit there in the front of the car in the warm morning light, staring through the glass at the arachnid.
You think it followed you, or do you think
soft?
It grew.
That's the most bizarre thing about it. Rather than having a hard, dark exoskeleton like other spiders, this one looks fleshy. No, that's not quite right. It looks fatty. Looks squishy, like parts of the body that get exposed in traumatic crashes. Wrinkles and folds of pink, mushy cells with fatty deposits. Except it cannot be made from those kinds of things. It's a spider. As they watch, the spider seems to recognize their attention, stands up on its back 4 legs, and races the remaining ones in the air. It looks almost as if it is doing some kind of mating dance for them. It turns its back to them, revealing a pattern of brightly colored dots across its abdomen. The doctor drags his eyes away from the dance. The sun is gone. Night has fallen again. His stomach stabs at him in hunger. But that can't be right. It was sunrise only a few seconds ago. The headache had started as he sat down on his flight.
I think infestation has occurred.
5 hours in and somewhere over an ocean, he knows he's not going to sleep tonight. He can't get the image of all those spiders out of his mind.
Because they in your mind.
He needs to report this, and he will.
That's not good.
But not yet. A spider crawls up the seat in front of him. His heart stops, and he sits back violently in his seat, eyes wide. On the floor of the plane, pink spiders everywhere. They're not real. They're not
He's imagining
real.
it?
Just his
All
imagination.
of its imagination?
He needs some rest.
Wait.
That's what he needs.
Wait.
He'll fly home, wait for the headache to pass.
Just thoughts now?
Then he can call someone.
Are the spiders for real?
But right now, he just feels too groggy to do any of that.
The webs were real.
The adrenaline of his hallucination passes as quickly as it had come. He can feel the glass pot in his pocket tapping occasionally, begging for his attention. His head aches.
Is that a hallucination
he runs a hand
too,
through
though?
his hair. That can't be. Is he really growing gray hairs
already?
already?
Spiderwebs?
In frustration, he reaches up and taps at his forehead. Much to his surprise, the headache disappears almost instantaneously. If anything, it feels good. He sits there for several minutes, drumming a couple of fingers against his forehead, and before he knows it, he's fast asleep. All his fears and anxieties long behind him.
What?
Only they are not behind him. Once he touches down, he goes straight home to his apartment. No spiders to be seen. Why not? Shouldn't there be more spiders? He certainly wants more spiders. His headache comes back. He drinks water, takes some medicine, goes for a nap, and turns off all of the lights. But nothing seems to work. Even the tapping stops working. More spiders. A call lights up his phone screen. An international number.
What is going on,
It takes a long time to answer it. It's his translator. The man's voice is shrill, panicked, far beyond what the doctor had ever heard before, even when they'd been running from the spiders.
He's got spider stuff going on, too.
The translator is not making much sense. His words are slurred, and his sentences stop and start seemingly at random. None of it makes sense. The doctor turns the volume on his phone down. It's too loud for his headache. Way too loud. Government knows. Should have worn gloves. Too late. The pain. Pleasure. Using a hammer. None of it makes any sense.
He's gonna hit his head.
The doctor looks down at his phone screen. The call is gone. His phone is dead.
Oh no, he said
Hadn't
using a
it been
hammer.
on full a moment ago? What time is it? And where are the spiders? He punches himself in the head. A smile spreads across his face. He's in bed now. Something
like
red
the guy that
around
was
him.
hitting his head.
His pillow. It is soaked red. Could that be from his head?
Blood?
The sample pot sits on his bedside table. Only now,
with no spider in it.
How did that happen? Wasn't he standing in the kitchen a moment ago? He's losing time. He runs a hand through his hair. Webbing clings between his fingers.
That's spider
He sits under his desk with a hammer in his hand, euphoria washing over his body. Just once more. 8 more times. He hits the hammer against his forehead. Endorphins flood every cell of his body.
Oh my
so powerful
God.
he almost passes out as the pleasure chemicals crawl inside of him, oozing silk through the pores of his skin. Webs hang all over his apartment now.
Dude!
Just one more hit. 8 more hits. That feeling, it's just so. His wrists, his ankles. How many limbs? 4. Not enough. That light. Where is he?
Oh my
Figures
God.
crowd around
he
him.
thinks he's
It is hard
turning
to
into
see
a
them.
spider?
Something's in his eye. Everything looks blurry and far away. The pain is back.
Who's
his head.
looking at him?
Someone, please. He screams and pulls against the bindings on his limbs. The pain. It's impossible. He needs to make it stop. Just one hit.
If you
Just
don't hit
one
his
more hit from the
head,
hammer. That'll be enough.
He's in pain.
Something is behind his eye. He can feel it.
That's
Something
what's
crawling
going on with the
back
guy
of
in the
his eyeball.
bed.
But that doesn't matter. None of it matters, except getting his pain to stop. No more headaches. Just one more hit.
This is
That's all he
horrible.
needs. The hospital staff
Well,
have
that's a
never
mental
seen
condition.
anything like this before. They're out of their depth here. In the dead of night, they arrange for the doctor to be transferred to a specialist facility in the back of an ambulance.
Okay.
It is a challenge to get him out of his bed,
Uh-oh.
as the spider's web secreting from his skin
They
have
infected
all but
too.
tied him to the linen. As fate would have it, a drunk driver gives the doctor his
This
final
must be
wish.
Keter.
Not seeing a red light, the driver plows full speed into the side of the ambulance, sending it spinning
Seems
off
like
the
it would be
road and
very
down a
hard to
hill,
contain.
killing everyone inside, including the doctor. When police arrive at the scene in the early hours of the morning, they find the driver sitting on his own, staring at some small insects by the
Spiders.
wreckage. The driver is unharmed by the incident. His only complaint as he spends the following night in police
His head
custody
hurts.
is that he feels a mild headache coming on.
Uh-huh.
Anyone experiencing
God.
that headache is likely already too far gone from their
Right.
exposure to SCP-632,
Tell
an
us
anomalous
about it.
species of cognitohazardous arachnids nicknamed
It
Intrusive
is a
arachnid thoughts.
cognitohazard.
Unconfirmed reports of mysterious spider colonies have been springing up across Asia, particularly in rural China, for several decades in connection with this anomaly.
Okay.
In 1972, the population of an unnamed town in the Anhui province were found to have been almost entirely wiped out. An entire town of corpses, each with their heads
Way past
caved
the
in,
mental
brain
illness,
matter
dude.
missing.
Jeez.
With 106 dead, with 23 injured, this case is to this day the deadliest confirmed SCP-632 breach. Strange as it may be, physiologically speaking, SCP-632 could be considered cute. Their bodies are squishy in
So they
texture,
are
bright pink,
actual
and are in fact made up of human
physical,
tissue,
tangible,
brain tissue to be exact,
corporeal.
coated in a layer of protective fat.
Brain tissue.
As happened to our unfortunate doctor, SCP-632 reproduces parasitically within the human skull.
Right.
The exact mechanics of this process remain unclear. It is believed that SCP-632 infects its human host through a selection of sensory triggers. Those infected have each testified to having been exposed to the following. Firstly, viewing the pattern on SCP-632's abdomen exposed during the dance that the spiders often do under observation. Secondly, making physical contact with SCP-632. And lastly, through exposure to as yet unidentified chemical compounds secreted by the older SCP-632 instances.
So
this is where luck was not on our doctor's
side. A lot of
side.
ways to catch it.
He was smart enough to wear gloves during his encounter with SCP-632 in China, which may have been enough to protect him from being infected. However, upon his arrival as he fell out of the car, his hand landed directly in an SCP-632 web, housing a solitary live spider. If he had remembered his car sickness tablets, this could have all been avoided.
So his car
Within
sickness
3
at the
hours
beginning.
of initial exposure to SCP-632, the subject will start to experience mild headaches, followed by an uncanny sensation that their skin is growing silk. During this period, MRI scans have found that small filament-like structures start to form in the host's brain tissue. As these filaments multiply and spread throughout the brain, the subjects report developing an obsession with spiders. The brain tissue steadily deteriorates, leading to changes in personality and mood, as well as irrational behavior. Over the coming days, the headaches grow more severe as the filament cells press against the blood vessels lining the inside of the skull. Subjects find that they can relieve this sensation by tapping or hitting their forehead, replacing it with a pleasurable feeling as the filaments release endorphins upon impact.
Oh!
This is part of the sinister final act of SCP-632's reproduction.
I mean, at least it
After
puts you out of your misery.
Days, as the host's headaches worsen, they find they have to hit their skull harder and harder to alleviate the pain and get that chemical high.
Endorphins.
Eventually, driven mad by the pain inside their head, they crack through their own skull. At this point, all of the gestating spiders that have been forming within the filaments in their brain, estimated to number between 80 and 200, can escape through the opening.
Wow.
Because of its unique containment difficulties caused by its cognitohazardous properties, SCP-632 has been given the Euclid object class.
Euclid?
There is currently one
You
live
would think it would be
colony of
harder to contain, though.
SCP-632 stored in the biological containment wing of Site-52. The colony is housed in a small enclosure measured 20 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 20 centimeters and sustained on a diet of insects and water supplied through a vacuum chute. All personnel that work in proximity to SCP-632 are regularly screened. Physical contact with any SCP-632 is strictly prohibited, and all personnel are required to wear protective equipment and respirators at all times while handling live or deceased specimens. They keep a close eye on anyone developing any symptoms, especially headaches, the feeling of silk on the skin, or intrusive arachnid thoughts.
Jeez.
Now go and watch another entry from the files of Dr. Bob, like shadow spiders, SCP-538, just in case you weren't feeling enough arachnophobic paranoia already.
That was rough too. There's no way you can tell me there's any mental illness on Earth that can compete with that. Don't get me wrong, there's some real bad ish out there. There ain't nothing bad like that though. First of all, spiders, a lot of people have arachnophobia, right? But this is something on a whole this something on a whole nother level. And the fact that it's contracted, it can be contracted through cognitohazard. Like literally just seeing something can infect you. Oh my god, dude. Guys, Dr. Bob, make sure to subscribe to him. Subscribe to me if you like reaction videos too. Thanks so much for watching. As always, this is Zueljin signing off. We'll see you next time.